Every action we take, every decision we make stems from a deeper reason, our why. It's that core belief, that purpose that drives us forward. But here's the thing, distractions are the silent killers of that purpose. They creep in subtly, often disguised as urgent emails, buzzing notifications, or the endless scroll of social media, and before we realize it, they pull us away from what truly matters. When you understand your why, focus becomes not just a habit, but a necessity. It's like setting a compass. Without a clear direction, even the smallest distraction can send you veering off course. Imagine a ship sailing in the open sea without a destination in mind. It might keep moving, but it will never arrive anywhere meaningful. That's what life feels like without focus. Constant motion with no real progress. The danger is that distractions don't always look harmful. In fact, they often feel productive. Checking emails, responding to messages, attending back-to-back meetings. It all seems like work. But here's the truth. Without a clear why, these activities become noise. They consume your time and energy, but offer little in return. It's like running on a treadmill. Lots of movement, no forward motion. Our brains aren't wired for constant switching. Every time we shift our attention from a strategic task to a quick text, from deep thinking to a social media notification, we lose momentum. Psychologists call this attention residue, where fragments of the previous task linger in our minds, making it harder to fully engage with the new one. Over time, this constant switching doesn't just slow us down, it erodes our ability to focus deeply altogether. And here's where the why becomes crucial. When we anchor ourselves in purpose, focus transforms from a challenge into a choice. It becomes easier to say no to the unimportant because we are saying yes to something greater. Think of the leaders who inspire us most. They aren't immune to distractions, but they have clarity. They know why they're doing what they're doing, and that clarity acts as a shield, protecting their focus against the noise. But clarity doesn't come by accident. It requires introspection. It demands that we ask ourselves hard questions. Why am I doing this? What's the bigger picture? Is this task moving me closer to my purpose or pulling me away? Without these questions, it's too easy to get caught up in the day-to-day whirlwind, mistaking busyness for progress. And then there's the emotional side of distraction. Many times we seek distractions not because we lack focus, but because we're avoiding something deeper. Discomfort, fear of failure, self-doubt. Distractions offer a quick escape. They numb us, even if momentarily, from the weight of purpose-driven work. But in doing so, they rob us of the opportunity to do something meaningful. It's not about eliminating distractions entirely. That's impossible. It's about cultivating an awareness of them and understanding their cost. Every time you give in to a distraction, you're making a trade. You're trading depth for surface-level engagement, long-term goals for short-term gratification, purpose for passivity. We live in a world that equates busyness with productivity. There's an unspoken belief that if you're constantly moving, responding, attending, and multitasking, you must be getting things done. But there's a dangerous flaw in this mindset. Activity doesn't always equal progress. And in many cases, the feeling of being productive is just that, a feeling, not a fact. Think about it. How often do you finish a day filled with back-to-back meetings, endless emails, and countless small tasks, only to wonder, what did I actually accomplish today? It's a common experience. The day was full, but it wasn't necessarily effective. This is the illusion of productivity. The false sense that we're moving forward when in reality we're often just running in circles. One of the biggest culprits behind this illusion is multitasking. We've been led to believe that juggling multiple tasks at once is a sign of efficiency, that handling a phone call while replying to emails and checking notifications makes us more effective. But the truth is, our brains aren't built for it. Science has shown that what we call multitasking is really task switching. Each time we switch from one task to another, there's a cognitive cost, a loss of focus, a dip in quality, and an increase in time taken to complete both tasks. Yet multitasking feels productive. Why? Because it gives us the sensation of doing more. Every time we check something off our to-do list, no matter how minor, we get a small dopamine hit. It feels good, it feels like progress. But when we step back, we realize that many of those completed tasks were low value, easy wins that kept us busy, but didn't move the needle on what truly matters. This is especially prevalent in modern work culture. We celebrate the hustle. We wear busyness as a badge of honor. The person who responds to emails at midnight, who's always available, who juggles multiple projects at once, they're often seen as the hardest workers. But the reality is, constant busyness often masks a lack of clarity and focus. It's easier to stay busy with shallow tasks than to sit down and do the deep, challenging work that requires full attention and creativity. Another contributor to the illusion of productivity is our obsession with immediacy. Instant replies, quick turnarounds, real-time updates, these have become the norm. But in the rush to be fast, we often sacrifice depth. We respond to emails without fully thinking through our answers. We skim documents instead of deeply understanding them. We make decisions quickly, sometimes without enough data or insight, all in the name of speed. And then there are the distractions disguised as work. Meetings are a prime example. How many meetings have you sat through that could have been an email? How many times have you attended meetings without a clear agenda, where people talk in circles and no real decisions are made? These activities consume time and energy, but they rarely contribute to meaningful progress. But perhaps the most insidious part of the illusion of productivity is how it affects our sense of self-worth. In a culture that values output over outcomes, we start to tie our identity to how much we do rather than what we achieve. We feel guilty when we're not busy. Downtime feels unproductive, even though it's in those moments of stillness that creativity and clarity often emerge. This illusion also creates a cycle. The busier we are, the more scattered our focus becomes. And the more scattered we are, the harder it is to do deep, meaningful work. So we compensate by doing even more emails, more meetings, more tasks, just to maintain that feeling of productivity. It's a vicious loop, one that leaves us exhausted but unfulfilled. The key to breaking free from this illusion starts with awareness. It's about recognizing that being busy isn't the same as being effective. It's about asking ourselves hard questions. Am I focusing on what truly matters? Am I creating real value, or am I just moving paper around? There's a silent force shaping our behavior every single day, and most of us don't even realize it. It's powerful, addictive, and it's rewiring how we focus, how we work, and even how we think. That force is dopamine. Often referred to as the feel-good chemical, dopamine is a neurotransmitter in our brains that plays a major role in how we experience pleasure, motivation, and reward. But here's the catch. It's not just about feeling good, it's about wanting to feel good again and again. That's where the trap lies. In its purest form, dopamine is what drives us to achieve. It's what pushed our ancestors to hunt, gather, and survive. Every time they found food or discovered something new, their brains rewarded them with a hit of dopamine, reinforcing the behavior. But today, we're not hunting for food, we're hunting for likes, notifications, and quick wins. And the modern world has become a playground for dopamine triggers. Think about the last time your phone buzzed with a notification. Maybe it was a text, an email, or a social media like. That tiny buzz? That was your brain releasing dopamine even before you checked it. The mere anticipation of a reward is often more powerful than the reward itself. This is why we're so drawn to our devices. They're engineered to keep us in this constant loop of anticipation and gratification. Social media platforms, email alerts, even the endless scroll of news feeds, all of these are designed to hijack our dopamine systems. Every like, every comment, every retweet acts as a micro reward, giving us a fleeting sense of validation. And because it feels good, we go back for more. It's a cycle. Trigger, action, reward, repeated over and over until it becomes habitual, sometimes even compulsive. But the dopamine trap isn't just about social media. It shows up in our work too. We've become addicted to quick tasks, the ones that give us immediate results. Replying to an email, ticking off a to-do list item, sending a quick Slack message. These small actions provide instant dopamine hits. They feel productive in the moment, but they often pull us away from the deeper, more meaningful work that doesn't offer immediate rewards. This is why so many of us struggle with focus. Deep work, the kind that requires creativity, problem solving, and strategic thinking, doesn't offer the same quick dopamine payoffs. It's slow, sometimes frustrating, and often filled with uncertainty. There is no instant gratification when you're working on a complex project or writing a report. And so, when faced with a choice between deep work and a quick dopamine hit from a notification, our brains naturally gravitate toward the latter. It becomes a constant tug-of-war between what we know we should be doing and what our brains want in the moment. And the more we give in to these quick rewards, the more we reinforce the behavior. Over time, our tolerance for boredom decreases. We become less able to sit in silence, to focus deeply, to engage in tasks that require patience and sustained attention. This is particularly dangerous in leadership and creative roles, positions that demand vision, long-term thinking, and the ability to navigate complexity. When leaders fall into the dopamine trap, they start making decisions based on short-term gains rather than long-term purpose. They become reactive, jumping from one notification to the next, one crisis to another, without ever finding the space to think strategically. And it's not just about productivity. The dopamine trap affects our relationships too. How often do we find ourselves half listening during a conversation, eyes flickering to our phones, waiting for the next buzz or ping? It erodes our ability to be present, to connect deeply with others. We're physically there, but mentally we're somewhere else, caught in a loop of anticipation, waiting for the next hit. The most insidious part of the dopamine trap is how invisible it is. It feels normal. Everyone's doing it. The constant checking, the endless scrolling. It's become part of our daily routines. And because it's so normalized, we rarely stop to question it. We don't realize how much time and energy we're losing, how much of our focus is being fragmented, how our ability to engage in deep, meaningful work is being slowly eroded. And the worst part? The more we feed the cycle, the harder it becomes to break. Dopamine doesn't just reward the behavior, it reinforces the craving. The more hits we get, the more we want. It's a biological loop that keeps us chasing short-term gratification at the expense of long-term fulfillment. But the cost is high. We trade depth for immediacy. We sacrifice focus for fleeting pleasure. And slowly, without even realizing it, we lose touch with the work, the ideas, and the relationships that truly matter. In today's hyper-connected world, there's a growing divide between two types of work: deep work and shallow work. On the surface, they might look the same. Both fill up our calendars, both consume our time, and both leave us feeling like we've been productive. But the difference between them is what ultimately separates meaningful progress from mere busyness. Deep work is focused, undistracted, and cognitively demanding. It's the kind of work that pushes your skills to the limit, leading to the creation of something valuable. It's when a writer finally pieces together a compelling story, when a strategist connects disparate data points into a cohesive plan, or when an engineer solves a complex problem after hours of concentration. Deep work is where creativity thrives and where breakthroughs happen. It's the space where mastery is developed. Shallow work, on the other hand, is non-cognitively demanding. It's often performed while distracted and doesn't create much long-term value. It includes things like answering emails, attending status meetings without clear outcomes, scrolling through social media under the guise of research, or making minor edits to a presentation. Shallow work feels productive in the moment, but it rarely contributes to significant progress or innovation. The problem is that shallow work has become the default mode for many of us. Our days are filled with constant pings, notifications, and low-stakes tasks that pull us away from deep, focused thinking. And because shallow work is easier, it doesn't demand intense concentration or problem solving. It often becomes our comfort zone. But here's the thing. Meaningful accomplishments rarely come from shallow work. Innovation, strategy, creativity, these all require depth. Yet, in the modern workplace, deep work is under constant attack. Open office layouts, instant messaging tools, and the expectation of immediate replies create environments where distraction is the norm. Even the culture of multitasking, which many still wear as a badge of honor, undermines our ability to do deep work. Every time we switch from one task to another, our brains have to refocus, leading to what psychologists call attention residue. That residue diminishes our cognitive capacity, making it harder to dive deep into complex problems. There's also a psychological comfort in shallow work. It offers quick wins. Responding to a few emails or attending back-to-back meetings gives us a sense of progress. We check off boxes on a to-do list and feel a rush of accomplishment, even if we haven't done anything that moves the needle. It's the dopamine-driven cycle of short-term gratification, easier to indulge in than the slower, sometimes frustrating process of deep work. But why is deep work so difficult to access? It's because it requires solitude and undivided attention, two things that are increasingly rare. Deep work is mentally taxing. It forces us to confront hard problems, sit with uncertainty, and sometimes fail before finding the right solution. It demands patience and discipline, two qualities that are hard to maintain in a world that thrives on immediacy and constant stimulation. This divide between deep and shallow work doesn't just affect individual productivity. It has broader implications for organizations and leadership. Leaders who operate primarily in shallow work modes, constantly reacting to emails, attending every meeting, micromanaging minor details, lose sight of the bigger picture. They spend so much time working in the business that they forget to work on the business. Strategy, vision, long-term planning, these are all deep work tasks. Without the time and space for them, organizations drift, making short-term decisions without a clear sense of direction. Another challenge is that shallow work is often more visible. Managers can see who's busy, who's responding quickly, who's attending every meeting, but deep work is invisible. It might look like someone staring at a screen for hours, lost in thought, or someone stepping away from their desk entirely to think through a complex problem. In environments that equate visibility with productivity, deep work is undervalued and often deprioritized. The cultural bias towards shallow work also impacts how we structure our days. Most people start their mornings diving into emails or messages, immediately placing themselves in a reactive mode. Once the day starts that way, it's hard to regain focus. Shallow tasks continue to stack up, and the window for deep work closes. Over time, this leads to a cycle where people feel perpetually busy but simultaneously unaccomplished. They're moving fast but going nowhere meaningful. Moreover, the shift from deep to shallow work erodes our ability to focus over time. Focus is like a muscle. It strengthens with use, but weakens when neglected. Constant shallow work reduces our attention span, making it harder to engage deeply even when we want to. This is why many people find themselves unable to read a book without reaching for their phone, or struggle to concentrate on a project without checking notifications every few minutes. The distinction between deep and shallow work also affects personal fulfillment. There's a profound sense of satisfaction that comes from engaging deeply with a task, from losing yourself in a flow state where time disappears and you're fully immersed in what you're doing. These moments are rare in shallow work. They're born from focus, challenge, and creativity. Without them, work starts to feel empty, leading to burnout and disengagement, not from overwork, but from a lack of meaningful work. Yet, despite these challenges, deep work remains the key to excellence in nearly every field. Whether it's writing, coding, designing, strategizing, or leading, the ability to focus deeply is what separates the average from the exception. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters and doing it well. Distractions aren't always just the innocent buzzes, pings, and notifications pulling us away from our work. Sometimes they're much deeper than that. Often distractions act as avoidance mechanisms, a way for us to escape tasks, emotions, or responsibilities that feel overwhelming, uncomfortable, or even threatening to our sense of self. They become the perfect excuse, the easy out, shielding us from the very things we know we should be facing. At first glance, it might seem like distractions are purely external. The phone rings, a message pops up, an email demands a reply. But if we dig deeper, we realize that more often than not, we choose to be distracted. We reach for our phones when a task gets too difficult. We check social media when the document we're writing hits a roadblock. We respond to non-urgent emails because the project that really needs our attention feels daunting. This is the subtle but powerful role distractions play as tools for avoidance. Why do we do this? Because certain types of work and certain thoughts are uncomfortable. Deep, meaningful work often brings us face to face with our limitations. It forces us into spaces where we might fail, where we might not have the answers, where our abilities are tested. That discomfort triggers a desire to escape, and distractions offer the perfect, socially acceptable way out. No one questions if you're replying to emails or checking Slack messages. It looks like work, but in reality, it's avoidance. This isn't just about tasks. It's emotional too. Distractions help us avoid feelings we'd rather not confront. Uncertainty, fear of failure, self-doubt. These emotions surface when we engage in challenging work or face personal dilemmas. Rather than sitting with those feelings, we turn to distractions for quick relief. Scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, or endlessly researching minor details, these activities provide a mental escape, even if temporary. The concept of emotional avoidance is deeply tied to this behavior. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. When we encounter something stressful or uncomfortable, our instinct is to move away from it. Distractions offer an easy, immediate way to do that. But in doing so, they reinforce a cycle. Every time we use a distraction to avoid discomfort, we strengthen that avoidance behavior, making it harder to face challenges in the future. Consider procrastination, a classic example of distraction as an avoidance mechanism. When a task feels overwhelming or when we fear we might not do it perfectly, procrastination steps in as a shield. We convince ourselves that we'll get to it later, but in the meantime, we fill the gap with shallow, less demanding tasks. We clean our desks, check emails, or dive into less critical work, all of which gives us the illusion of productivity while allowing us to avoid the real challenge. But avoidance doesn't just impact our work. It spills into our personal lives too. Conversations we're afraid to have, decisions we're hesitant to make, goals we're too scared to pursue, all of these can be sidestepped through distractions. We tell ourselves we're too busy to focus on that personal project, too swamped to address that relationship issue, too overworked to prioritize self-care. In reality, we're using busyness as a distraction, a socially acceptable mask for avoidance. The problem with this behavior is that it compounds over time. The more we avoid, the larger the looming tasks or issues become. The project we procrastinated on starts to feel insurmountable. The conversation we dodged becomes more strained. The emotions we suppressed bubble up in unexpected ways. Stress, anxiety, burnout. And yet, our instinct remains the same: avoid discomfort through distraction. What makes distractions as avoidance mechanisms particularly insidious is how normalized they are. We live in a culture that celebrates busyness, where being constantly connected and on is seen as a virtue. This makes it easy to hide behind distractions without even realizing it. We justify our avoidance with statements like, "I'm just too busy," or I need a break, when in fact, we're escaping from tasks or feelings that challenge us. There's also the role of perfectionism in this dynamic. For many, the fear of not doing something perfectly can be paralyzing. Rather than risk producing something that might be flawed, they avoid starting altogether. Distractions become a safety net, allowing them to sidestep the possibility of failure. It's not that they're lazy or unmotivated, it's that the emotional stakes feel too high and distractions offer immediate relief. And let's not forget the impact of the modern digital landscape. Our devices are designed to pull us in, offering endless streams of content, notifications, and dopamine hits. But what's often overlooked is how we actively seek out these distractions, not just because they're available, but because they serve a purpose. They help us avoid boredom, discomfort, and even self-reflection. It's easier to scroll through social media than to sit alone with our thoughts. It's simpler to binge watch a series than to confront feelings of loneliness or dissatisfaction. This reliance on distractions as avoidance mechanisms has profound implications on our focus, creativity, and overall well-being. When we're constantly escaping discomfort, we miss out on opportunities for growth. Discomfort, after all, is often a sign that we're stretching ourselves, pushing past our limits, or engaging with something meaningful. By avoiding it, we stay in a safe but stagnant space, comfortable but unfulfilled. Moreover, using distractions to avoid difficult emotions or tasks creates a fragmented sense of time. Our days become filled with shallow activities, leaving us feeling busy but disconnected. We end the day exhausted yet unsatisfied, wondering where the time went and why we didn't make the progress we intended. This pattern of avoidance through distraction also diminishes our ability to tolerate discomfort over time. The more we escape challenging emotions or tasks, the lower our threshold becomes for dealing with them. We start avoiding even mildly uncomfortable situations, leading to a cycle of increased anxiety and decreased resilience. What makes this cycle particularly difficult to break is that it's self-reinforcing. Each time we successfully use a distraction to avoid discomfort, our brains register that behavior as effective. It worked. We didn't have to deal with that uncomfortable task or emotion. So the next time we face a similar challenge, our brain encourages the same response. This is how habits form. And it's why breaking free from distraction-based avoidance requires more than just willpower. It demands awareness and intentionality. Recognizing distractions as avoidance mechanisms is the first step toward regaining control. It means asking ourselves hard questions. Why am I reaching for my phone right now? What am I trying to avoid? Is this task genuinely urgent, or am I using it as an excuse to sidestep something more challenging? These questions help us uncover the deeper reasons behind our behaviors, allowing us to make more conscious choices. But awareness alone isn't enough. We also need strategies to confront the discomfort we've been avoiding, whether that means breaking down overwhelming tasks into smaller, manageable steps, setting boundaries around our time, or developing emotional resilience to sit with difficult feelings. In every organization, there's an unspoken divide between leaders and followers. It's not just about titles, roles, or who sits at the head of the table. It's about focus. The focus factor is what often separates true leaders from those who merely follow. It's the lens through which they view challenges, opportunities, and the future. While followers tend to focus on what's directly in front of them, tasks, deadlines, and instructions, leaders look beyond the immediate. They focus on vision, strategy, and long-term impact. This distinction in focus is subtle but powerful, shaping not only how people work, but how they think, make decisions, and drive change. At its core, focus is about attention, where we direct it, how we sustain it, and what we prioritize. Leaders excel not because they have more hours in a day or because they work harder, but because they focus on what truly matters. They understand that their greatest value doesn't come from checking off tasks, but from setting direction, inspiring others, and solving complex problems that others might avoid. Followers, on the other hand, often find themselves consumed by the day-to-day. Their focus is task-oriented. They're concerned with meeting deadlines, following procedures, and ensuring that what's expected of them gets done. There's nothing inherently wrong with this. Organizations need people who can execute efficiently. But the danger lies in becoming so absorbed in the immediate that there's no space left for strategic thinking or creative problem solving. The difference in focus also shows up in how leaders and followers approach challenges. Followers often look for guidance when problems arise. They ask, "What should I do?" or "How do I fix this?" Their focus is on finding solutions within existing frameworks. Leaders, however, step back and ask bigger questions. Why is this a problem in the first place? Or what's the broader impact of this issue? They're less concerned with quick fixes and more interested in root causes and systemic solutions. This broader focus allows leaders to see patterns and connections that others miss. It's why they can anticipate market shifts, recognize emerging trends, or pivot strategies before crises hit. They're not caught up in the noise of the immediate. They're attuned to the signals that point toward the future. But maintaining this kind of focus isn't easy, especially in environments saturated with distractions. Leaders face the same barrage of emails, meetings, and notifications as everyone else. The difference is that they're intentional about what gets their attention. They understand that every time they say yes to something trivial, they're saying no to something potentially transformative. This intentionality is where many aspiring leaders stumble. It's tempting to fill the day with activity, to feel productive by staying busy. But busyness is not the same as focus. In fact, constant busyness often dilutes focus, pulling attention in so many directions that nothing gets the depth it deserves. Leaders guard their focus fiercely because they know it's one of their most valuable assets. The focus factor also influences how leaders and followers perceive time. Followers often work on short-term timelines. What's due today, this week, or this quarter? Their focus is on immediate outputs. Leaders, however, think in longer arcs. They ask questions like, where do we want to be in 5 years? Or how will this decision impact our future growth? This long-term focus doesn't mean they ignore the present, but they frame it within a larger context. This perspective shift has profound effects on decision-making. Followers might choose the quickest, easiest path to complete a task, while leaders consider the broader implications. They weigh trade-offs, think about sustainability, and make decisions that align with overarching goals rather than short-term gains. Another key aspect of the focus factor is how leaders and followers handle ambiguity. Followers often seek clarity before moving forward. They want clear instructions, defined outcomes, and measurable steps. Leaders, on the other hand, are comfortable navigating uncertainty. They focus not on having all the answers, but on asking the right questions. In ambiguous situations, they rely on their ability to prioritize and adapt, rather than waiting for perfect clarity. This ability to focus amid uncertainty is what allows leaders to innovate. Innovation rarely happens in predictable, linear environments. It emerges from the unknown, from experimenting, failing, learning, and iterating. Leaders who can maintain focus in these messy, complex spaces are the ones who drive meaningful change. But perhaps the most profound difference in focus between leaders and followers lies in their orientation toward purpose. Followers often focus on what they do, completing tasks, following processes, meeting expectations. Leaders focus on why they do it. They connect their actions and decisions to a deeper purpose, whether that's the mission of the organization, the impact on customers, or a broader societal goal. This purpose-driven focus is what inspires others. It's why people follow leaders, not because they have authority, but because they provide direction and meaning. When leaders articulate a compelling vision and focus on that higher purpose, they create alignment. Teams understand not just what needs to be done, but why it matters. The focus factor also shapes how leaders approach people. While followers might focus on tasks and outputs, leaders focus on people and potential. They see beyond current performance, identifying strengths, nurturing talent, and creating environments where others can thrive. Their focus isn't just on getting work done, it's on growing others, building trust, and fostering collaboration. Interestingly, the distinction between leaders and followers in terms of focus isn't always tied to formal roles. There are people in follower positions who think and act like leaders because of how they focus. They see the bigger picture, ask strategic questions, and take initiative. Conversely, there are people in leadership roles who remain stuck in follower mindsets, micromanaging, getting bogged down in details, and failing to focus on the broader vision. This highlights an important truth. Leadership isn't just about position, it's about focus. It's about where you direct your attention, how you prioritize, and what lens you use to make decisions. The shift from follower to leader begins with a shift in focus, from the immediate to the strategic, from tasks to vision, from problems to possibilities. But making this shift requires more than just intention, it requires discipline. Focus is constantly under threat in today's world. Distractions are everywhere, and the pull toward shallow, reactive work is strong. Leaders who excel in the focus factor cultivate habits and environments that protect their attention. They set boundaries, delegate effectively, and design their days to prioritize deep, meaningful work over shallow, reactive tasks. They also practice self-awareness. They notice when their focus drifts, when they're pulled into the weeds, or when they're reacting rather than leading. This awareness allows them to course correct, realign with their purpose, and refocus on what truly matters. The focus factor is also about resilience. Distractions, challenges, and setbacks are inevitable. What differentiates leaders is their ability to maintain focus through turbulence. They don't get derailed by every crisis or caught up in every minor issue. Instead, they keep their eyes on the bigger picture, navigating complexity while staying anchored to their purpose. In essence, the focus factor is what drives impact. It's what allows leaders to move beyond busyness and create meaningful change. It's the invisible force behind strategic decisions, inspiring visions, and lasting success. And it's what separates those who simply go through the motions from those who lead with intention, clarity, and purpose.